Guruve Gaura Chandraya Radhikaya Tadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadabhaktaya Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpaturvyascha Kripa Sindhuvevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Dandavat Pranam, Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis, Maharajas. I want to offer my Koti Dandavats onto the lotus feet of my Guru Parapadma, Nityalila Vishnu Shnupada Paramahamsa Parivraj Gajaja Ashtottara Saptasi Samad, Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, onto my Param Guru Dev, Nityalila Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Parivraj Gajaja Ashtottara Saptasi Samad, Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj, our Srila Prabhupada, and Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivraj Gajaja Ashtottara Saptasi Samad, Srila Bhakti Pragan Keshav Goswami Maharaj. Also onto our entire Rupanuga Guru Varga, onto Sri Sachinandan Gaura Hari, onto my own Thakurji, Shishi Gaura Gadadha, and Shishi Radha Vallabhju Ki Jai. So I'm starting the narration a little bit later today. We had a kind of busy morning, and it took me a little while to get going, and I might have to end a little bit early because we have some other housework going on and things like that. So I'm going to try to get in as much as I can today, and then I'll pick up, on the next time I'm able to do it. So this should be installment number 7. I sure hope I'm keeping the numbers right. If not, pretty much we could go by topic. So today we should start dealing with Central Africa. I left off in describing my departure from Ghana and my coming back to America for a brief period of time. I believe that was around 1983. And I had mentioned that I had, gone to see my parents. My father was living in New York, my mother was living in Colorado, in Denver. And actually that was a pretty interesting thing because it would be the last time that I would physically see my mother. I told the pretty funny story in the last narration about my mother's. She was very infatuated with the idea that I had become a devotee and that I was practicing Krishna consciousness. She always was extremely supportive. And I guess in great part that was because she knew from a younger age that my uncle, I told this in the very first narration, he had come to live with us, and so she knew that he was training myself, my brother, and my sister in yoga and meditation and all these things, and she had no problem with it. She was very happy. We were a pretty eclectic family overall. I mean, my mother practiced Judaism, my brother had done everything from Sufism to yoga with us, and so it was a pretty weird. All at one point attended a Baptist church, and I grew up going to a Roman Catholic school and church in New York. So it was a pretty, eclectic family. And so anyways, my mom, she was very happy that I was a devotee. And so seeing me and getting a chance to spend time with me was really, as fortune would have it, something really wonderful, because I would come back to New York, which I'll start to speak about now. And then after that, I would go back to Africa. And my mother left this world I think in 1984, so it wasn't too long after that. I believe that she left the world. And I was in Africa and I could not get back. I was in Zimbabwe, actually. And my family called me. I spoke to my elder brother, who's also always been like a mentor and everything to me. And he mentioned that, my mom had a stroke, that she was in the hospital, and she was on life support at that time, and he was, asking, for my input on what should be done and everything. So I mentioned that whatever they decided is the final outcome of everything, to remove her from life support or whatever, they should get some paraphernalia from the Denver temple, a garland, some tulsi leaves, and of course my brother had chanted Hare Krishna So he was familiar with everything. So I told him to chant in my mother's ear, to put on the paraphernalia from the temple, and like that. And this would be the most auspicious way that she could leave. In the meantime, I kind of got ahead of myself because it was when I was in Zimbabwe. They tried to arrange my ticket and everything, and I eventually, was able to get back one more time. So anyways, I'll go on and kind of pick up from where we left off. Anyways, I had come back to America. This was 1983, and after visiting my father and visiting my mother, I came back to D.C., which was where we were based. Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's program was based there, but we had no longer had the restaurant. Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had started to travel more widely and everything, and so now the devotees had shifted, and Sanatan Prabhu, I think at that time, I spoke to him the other day, he mentioned that we had gotten a place right on 10th Street over in Southeast, 10th and East Street. And so I do remember going to that place. I do remember spending a little bit of time there. So it must have been in the interim between getting myself prepared to come back to Africa, which was going to be Central Africa now, and going to New York, because I came, I think, back from Denver. I think I went to that place on 10th Street for some time. And then as I got ready to go back to Africa, we came to New York. And I think in part we came to New York because Braja Leela had also come back by that time, and she was going to be collecting for the Christmas Marathon. So that was going to do two things. One, it was going to raise funds for us, obviously, to get back to Africa, and also to help the projects of Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. So we came to New York, and at that time, of course, the 55th Street Temple was gone, so we were staying in the Brooklyn Temple on Skimmerhorn Street. And it was doing the preparations, and then finally for the actual Christmas Marathon. And so many devotees were there in New York doing Sankirtan, and Ramabhadra Prabhu, who was the temple president, he engaged me for that entire month. And this was something very special for me, to cook for Shishi Radha Govinda. So I would cook the sweets were being made by someone else, but I was cooking the morning offering, and I was cooking the Raj Bhog offering for noon. Then I was cooking another offering in the afternoon. So 3 times a day I was doing the cooking. And throughout the rest of the day I was offering other kinds of services, cleaning and so forth and so on, because I wasn't going out on Sankirtan. So one of the persons that I met during that time, he wasn't going really out on Sankirtan so much, I don't believe. But one of the persons I met at that time, and it would become a very strong bond, I wrote to one devotee friend of mine, Lakshmi Narasimha Prabhu, who used to be the temple president in New York, actually. And he's in Puerto Rico now. And he had sent me some time back a picture of one of the sessions we had done, because we used to have these amazing Kirtan Bhajan sessions in the temple room. Not just on Sundays, but every day we do these Bhajan Kirtan sections. And the person whom, I had met and was doing all these Kirtans and Bhajan with, actually, was a very famous Kirtaniya in ISKCON and throughout the world, who was Sriman Ayendra Prabhu. So offering my Dandavat Pranam at the Lotus Feet of Sri Ayendra Baba. Of course, he left this world in Sri Brajadam. I can't remember what year that was, but we became very, very, very close friends. I mean, extremely close friends at that time. And I would tell some pastimes in relation to that. So when I was staying in the temple, I'd always played mridanga. In fact, I used to record with many devotees when they were doing recordings, especially Vyasiki. Vyasiki, a lot of the early recordings he was doing, I would always play mridanga on these recordings. One, there was a facility for recording in New York. Pranadas had a studio there, so we would record there or some other place. And so I remember recording for Vyasiki. In fact, I remember doing one recording where, I told you I'd sold all of my percussion instruments, so I didn't have any of those things, but I remember making some makeshift instruments for percussion to record on the album. So I would play the mridanga, and then I remember taking a light fixture, a huge light fixture from one of the lights in the basement and using it as a gattam. A gattam is like a South Indian clay pot drum, and it makes a really unique sound. So I remember taking off the light fixture and using it for that purpose and helping to record on the album. But anyway, so a lot of Kirtanias used to be in New York, but Ayendra Prabhu was living there at that time. And I don't know if people know, but Ayendra Prabhu was a very accomplished musician, not only in Kirtan Bhajan, but he played guitar and other instruments and so forth. So he was a well-accomplished musician. But he also frequently played an interesting instrument called the auto harp. So I don't know if anybody's seen an auto harp, and I don't know how to begin to describe it, but it's a small harp, and you play it with two sticks, and it's almost like a very enchanting kind of sound because you're getting overtones and everything else. So he would play harmonium, and sometimes he would play this auto harp. But anyway, every single day after the Raj Bhog offering, I would rest for a little while, then I would come downstairs and we would have these bhajan sessions in the temple room. And I would go back, I would cook afternoon offering, and then again come back and we would do bhajans, and this is how we would do it. We would start up around, when Thakurji would wake up, so that must have been like 4:35. Then we would do bhajans till the Sundar Arti. We do Sundar Arti. After Sundar Arti, we would, do bhajans a little more in the temple room. And then, as the devotees were all coming back in from Sankirtan for the night and taking some prasadam and everything else, and they would go to take rest, me and Ayendra would go out into the hallway outside of the temple room. And there was like a very nice echo there. So in a very soft way, we would do all of these nice Hare Krishna melodies in that hallway, which had an echo, and I would play the mridanga really kind of softly because the amplification of the hallway gave it its own nuance. So we spent the whole month of the Christmas marathon doing this program every single day. And this way we developed a really, really strong friendship. And this was right before it became time for me to go back to Africa. And so, he was wishing me well. And he had been in Vrindavan. I think he had been in Vrindavan. I think he went in 1982 or something like that. So he was at the same time making arrangements to go back to India. So we spent that whole month doing kirtan and bhajan together. And I remember promising that I would see him in India because I had not been to India yet. And in spite of all of that preaching that went on in West Africa, we never did actually go to India. So now we were going back to Africa. We were going to Central Africa this time, starting in Zimbabwe. And I was determined that I was going to go to India that year. So when the Mayapur Festival came around, I planned to go to the Mayapur Festival and then to go to Braj and spend some time. So, and I planned on spending some significant time because I had not been to India for quite a while. So anyways, long story short, me and Brajalila obviously were working under the auspices of Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj mentioned that, it was a good time, we had raised the funds and everything to get ready to go back to Africa. And that the devotee who had already started a program there, his name was Devarshi Das, and he was from Spain. So he was there pretty much alone. There were no other devotees there. He was doing sort of everything by himself. So Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj said that, I think Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had already gone there. He would always go and get a glimpse of all of these things first. So he said it was a really, really nice field. It was a really beautiful city, which Harare was. I mean, I was shocked when I got there. I did miss, I'm going to be very honest, Ghana was like home for me. I mean, I had really become accustomed to the lifestyle, to the devotees, and, I kind of really wanted to go back to Ghana. That was the truth. But we were in the pioneering spirit. It was about opening temples. And once you open a temple, to move on and go to another place and try to open up another temple. That was the spirit we were in. So anyway, many devotees had been through Central Africa as well, because the devotees who were preaching in Kenya, they would often come to Central Africa to either to collect money or make life members. And Jalakar Prabhu in particular, one devotee who was living here in Alachua, Jalakar Prabhu, he had been to Central Africa many times and had made many life members there. I'll talk about it later on, but there was some fallout from some of that as well. But he had established a real strong network of life members there. So whenever devotees went, you had some kind of, introduction or some kind of leeway into starting your preaching. So we got everything together, got our tickets together and everything, and again we were off. Seriously long flight, and we landed in Harare, and Devashi Prabhu, he met us at the airport, and he had a small, I'm going to mention this now because it's going to become prominent later on in the preaching, and I'll try to go back and reference it, but he had a small Datsun car. It was, no, he had two cars. He had a small van, and he had the little Datsun car. So he had two cars there. He came to pick us up actually in the van, not the Datsun. He came and picked us up in the small van and took us back to the little house that he had. He had like a little house, but the house was amazing because it was right downtown Harare. In fact, you could look out of our front of our building and you could look right across to the court. So the court building, which is a round building there right in the middle of Harare, you could look from our front porch and look right over to the court building and the gardens and everything in front of the court. So it was really centrally located, which means that anytime we went out preaching, it was walking distance to go downtown. You didn't have to take any of the cars or anything, so there was no issues. You just could walk downtown pretty much to go preaching. So he was very happy to have myself and Brother Leela come because, he was alone, and so now, you had not only help, but you also had, a lady devotee there, which would allow the preaching to kind of expand and, invite other people to come because he was a single. He was wearing white, so he was unmarried, but, had plans to be married, obviously. So to have a lady devotee there, not that I'm saying that that was the purpose, to be able to make lady devotees to enhance his possibilities, but, just overall preaching-wise, it's always good if there are Grihastha families where you have both male and female. So, anyways, we got to the building. It was a very nice facility, and it was split into kind of two. So there was one half of the building where Devashi was staying, and there was the little temple area he had established. He had his own room there, and there was a front room and a kitchen and all of that. And then you walk through like a small courtyard, right? And you open up another door, and you go into another side of the building where there was some more bedrooms and a bathroom, etc. So myself and Brother Leela were staying on that side of the building. So, in the beginning, he was saying, we could go out and go downtown and do Harinam and do Sankirtan. Now, Harare, and just Central Africa in general, but Harare in particular, was very developed. It was nothing like, and I don't want to use the word developed because everywhere, Lagos was developed, Accra was developed, but there was an element in West Africa of the culture being pretty front and center. Just like you could go downtown any given day in Nigeria and you would see, all kinds of cultural things, talking drummers, traditional weddings, all kinds of things. And similarly in Ghana, everywhere you went, you could find, a lot of culture fully in the social fabric, right? You didn't have to go to a village or something to see these things. Harare was quite different. Harare was just like being in a Western city, right? You didn't really see as much of the culture front and center. It was more of an urban kind of Western environment. So I was not initially quite as excited about being there as I was when I was in West Africa. But at the same time, I was, fully excited about the potential for preaching. So we went out a couple of days with some books and we chanted, and you wouldn't get the same kind of crowds, but people would gather around, interested people. You'd give them something. We weren't having a real Sunday program at that time because, Devashi was by himself, obviously. So, but we would invite people to come by and visit the facility, visit our place where we were staying, and we would pass out books. So that was pretty much the norm. And there was also preaching to the Indian community who were there. Primarily, there were, in Central Africa as a whole, there were two prominent communities. A long-standing business community, which is there, and mostly that was from the Gujarati community. And then there were expatriates or expats who were working there, either in IT, engineering, business, or something. So, we would go to both, and we would do preaching as well in the Indian community there. And, they would help a lot with everything that we needed. Especially there was one gentleman who didn't live far from where we had the temple. In fact, I think he helped Devashi get that building. And I forgot what he did, but he was, somebody who was well-to-do, had a very nice family. And I remember they would invite us frequently for meals. So I remember one night, this was the very first night, actually, frankly speaking, not the first night we arrived, but the first night we were invited to their home for a meal, for prasadam. So we got there and, they finished cooking everything and then actually have Devashi come and offer, right? So they were really, pretty conscious, and they, they had their own deities, a lot of Indian families, you have your own little deity room and everything. So we took darshan, everything. We came back, we sat out at the table, and they began serving out everything. It was really nice. Then, while all these, preparations that you're used to seeing came out, puris, all the various things, sabji, rice, all these different things. So all those things came out, and then they said, oh, and you have to taste this. So I was like, okay. So they came out with this pitcher, like a pretty sizable pitcher, and it had like a green, like thick drink in it. So I was like, wow. I hadn't really seen anything like that. So they took one of the, stainless steel cups, and they were filling it up, and I was like saying, oh, no, like make like half, because I wasn't sure what it was, right? So they filled up, our cups with this kind of smoothie, green looking smoothie, but it wasn't like vegetables and stuff. It wasn't that kind of green. It was like a pistachio green, for lack of a better word. So anyway, I didn't ask what it was, right? I just figured it was some kind of sweet or something, because it was after the main meal. So I went in and I took a sip. Unbelievable. So it was like so good, right? So then they came around, we all had seconds and everything. So, you want to have your sadhutva, means your sadhu nature, precede your your desires, right? Because you're trying to preach, so you don't want to drink 5 glasses of whatever this is because it tastes good. So after the second round, we said, oh, no more. But I inquired, I asked, this is really an amazing drink. What is it? So then the wife, first the husband started speaking, just avocados, it's avocados. So then the wife, she went through the actual composition. So what they would do is they would take ripe avocado, they would take fresh milk, and then they would take cardamom and pistachios. And they would grind up the pistachios so they were really, really fine. And they would then put them in the blender with the elaichi, means cardamom, and the avocado and the milk and obviously sugar. And they blended everything up, and they had these avocado pistachio smoothies, and they were just out of this world, literally. It was one of the best things I had ever had. So that was really, really an impressive evening, and we were, super happy. And we went back to our place, which again wasn't too far from theirs, and we would frequently go back there for meals, and they would always bring this pistachio drink, because once they found out we liked it, that was like okay, time for, the avocado drink. So one of the things we did notice, though, and this would be a theme throughout Central Africa, was that everybody's yard had 2 trees, avocado and mango. And they were so plentiful that it was like you could walk out any day and just grab a bunch of avocados and mangoes. That was every single day, right? And there used to become periods when it would be over the amount that anybody could accommodate, so they would start falling to the ground, and then they had to be cleaned up, because then, you start getting ants and everything else coming. So people would clean it up. And a lot of, when I got to Zambia, I don't want to give things away, but in Zambia, the Gujarati ladies, when they would fall, they would have the people collect them, and then they would take them and they would squeeze them, because they were really ripe, and they would put them in plastic bags and freeze them, and they would make mango ras out of it, mango rasa out of it. So, you know, I had that so many times also with a little bit of cumin actually. So even though cumin is more of a savory type spice, but it goes very well with mango roast. So anyway, so Zimbabwe was nice, right? I was trying to find my own niche, like what am I going to do? Because then Devashi, as me and Brajalila were there, he figured that we could go out doing some preaching and then he could do some other things during the day. So Brajalila would go out sometimes, but also Brajalila took care of the place a lot, and she cooked a lot, and she also was doing a lot of other organizing things and things like that. So sometimes I would go out by myself, and what I did was Devashi had a tambora, not a tambora, but a tampura, a smaller version of one. So I used to take that, right, instead of, because if I took just the murdanga, I used to take murdanga sometimes, but if you have murdanga, it's also nice to have somebody to play kartals, right? So sometimes I would just take the tampur and I would go walk from the building we had. I'd walk into a park that was in the center of the town. And I would sit on a bench and I would sing not only Hare Krishna, but I remember I would always start, before I got to Hare Krishna, I would sing like the songs of the morning program. So I would sing, and I would play tambor. And, you know, so we started to get, you know, like a whole crowd would gather around. I guess it was like being a street minstrel or something. They don't know what I'm saying, what I'm singing. They don't really know what the instrument is, but I guess the overall, you know, vibration of it was pretty, you know, transcendental in the sense of having this, you know, drone string instrument. I'm singing in some foreign language and so forth, so on. So a nice little crowd would always gather around, you know, especially around lunchtime and everything. And people would listen, and I was distributing books like that. And also I would inevitably meet some people who, you know, whether, you know, they weren't working or whatever the case is, they had time to sit down. So I would, you know, sit down with them on the bench. I would always sit on one of the benches. And we'd have these conversations and stuff, and I would preach and everything like that. So that became one of my staples. I would every day walk downtown, sit in the park bench, and I would chant, and never any disturbance from authorities or anything like that. So for me, that was like really, really blissful, right? And then I'd, you know, walk back at the end of the day, and we always had, you know, very nice prasadam because we could get anything in Harare. That was the city we were in. And so all the prasad was really nice. Devashi cooked, of course, Brajalila cooked. I also cooked. And, you know, things went on like that. There was another gentleman who was, I don't know if he was from South Africa or whether he was actually from Zimbabwe. But anyway, his name was John. And we used to call him Bhakta John. He was an elderly gentleman, European gentleman, elderly. And he was very instrumental in kind of always facilitating things and helping out and just doing different things. So he was pretty eclectic because he had to be in his very old 70s, late 60s. And why am I saying that? I'm 66 now. So I'm not saying, you know, he was super old. No, I mean, but anyways, he just appeared to be very much an elder to us at that time. So, but he was always very helpful and was a big part of our like Friends of Krishna Club type thing, because we had started a similar thing that we had in West Africa, which was, you know, involving people kind of in a Friends of Krishna club where they could do kind of congregational things. Another thing in Zimbabwe was going up to the university. So Devashi used to like to do that, and we would go to the universities and we would do programs up there. We had met one professor, and he would regularly, every semester, a couple of times within the semester, invite us up for his, what was the name of that class? Oh, comparative religion, right? So he'd have people come from different religions, and he'd always have the Hare Krishnas come. We'd do kirtan, and then Devashi generally would speak, or sometimes I would speak. And then we would all break off, myself and Brajalila, and we would preach to, you know, the students and everything. And so it was really, really interesting. This is something I would repeat in Zambia, and I'll tell a funny story about that when we get to Zambia. But anyway, so this was pretty much the mode of preaching in Zimbabwe. I didn't really get the same thrust of, you know, like we had in West Africa where, you know, you had people joining the ashram in droves. I mean, I remember once in Nigeria, there was an initiation later on. I went back to visit Nigeria, and there was an initiation where there were 100 people being initiated at one time. This was a big festival that they had in Wari. And, you know, Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, this is later on. This is after we come back to America and I go back to revisit West Africa with Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, Ganesham, who used to be known as Hari Krishna Das. He was a disciple of Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj and the son of Murari Hari, the very famous Kirtaniya in Mayapur. In fact, when he was a young boy, everybody in the movement used to listen to his bhajan kirtan tapes. So he became a disciple of Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. He got the name Ganesham. So later on, myself, him, Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was leading us, and Rohini Nandan Prabhu, who, you know, is a very good friend to this day. We all went to West Africa, and there was a huge, I mean, really huge initiation and festival in Wari. So that was amazing. But it wasn't like that in Zimbabwe. We weren't making devotees in droves. There wasn't a lot of people coming. It was pretty much like pulling teeth, really, to get people to consider, you know, taking up ashram life and all of that. So there was a kind of focus on more or less making a congregation. So we started a Sunday program and we started having people come. And Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he also sent more devotees. So now Bhuta Bhavan Prabhu, who had been in West Africa, he came. And Raivata Muni, who was in Ghana, he also came to Zimbabwe. So now we had even more of a crew there, and our preaching began to expand, and we began to travel more. I remember the first trip myself and Rajalila took, we went to, we just took a road trip from Harare, and we stopped at each of the towns all the way down to one town called Bulawayo. And we went all the way down as far as, I think, Botswana, right? And this is a trip that I would do again later, but on the other side, on Zambian side, right? And I think we went down and we think we saw Victoria Falls. That may have been the first time I saw Victoria Falls. I can't remember if it was that trip or when I went traveling with Mamantra Prabhu, who's Pujapat Shanta Maharaj now, of course. When we were in Zambia together, we went on a preaching trip similar to that and went to Victoria Falls. So anyway, so we were preaching like that. Things were going, you know, all right. And, you know, everybody was kind of happy. You know, we were trying to make some advancement, you know. And it was getting close. I know one of the big things was getting close for us to be able to go to India. And unlike, you know, any previous situations, we already had the money. I believe Brajalila had collected part of it during her Christmas marathon and all of that. But we had also applied for work permits in Zimbabwe. And we were on a waiting list or whatever to get our work permits to be able to be there as missionaries or whatever the case was. And I remember we got the provincial approval, which means, it's not provincial, provisional approval, which means, you know, pretty much we could be there, we could go out preaching, we could do things. But we had to, you know, kind of abide by certain rules. Now, we were going to India, so they said, yeah, well, there'd be no problem for you to go to India and come back. Somehow, I interpreted that, yes, you can, you know, have a work permit here now, you can operate locally, and you can go to India and come back, whatever, that we could go ahead and purchase the tickets in local currency there, which would make the ticket a lot cheaper, right? So anyways, we did that. We bought our tickets for India. It's going to be our first time going to Mayapur Festival and going on to Vrindavan and everything. So we bought the tickets, everything, and we were just continuing our preaching up until it came time to go to India. So I remember, I'm trying to think. Yeah, so anyways, I remember as we got closer to getting ready to go to India, we started thinking about, you know, well, how long are we going to be able to stay in India? I was thinking, you know, this is the first time that we're going to India. I would like to stay for a little while, you know, because I had never been. So I spoke to Devashi, and Devashi was saying, you know, yeah, you know, I think I'm going to go as well. So maybe we can, you know, we got a couple of people who can maintain here now. Maybe we can go and we can stay for a month, maybe even 2 months, and we could stay in India, right? So I was like really happy with that idea, and so we were all getting prepared to do that. Now, Another thing that happens in the interim is that we get one Mataji who starts to come around the temple. She's a local Mataji from Zimbabwe, and I cannot remember what her karmi name is. Like I said, I don't remember the karmi names of a lot of devotees, but eventually she gets initiated, and her name is Nagapatni Das, right? Now, she's a super interesting person. She pretty much joined Krishna consciousness because she had attraction to Devarshi. So I'm just going to put it out there, right? But, you know, by whatever means you can get them to come to the process, then, you know, you can only hope that they grow from there. But anyways, she became attracted to Devarshi. So she was a local Zimbabwean girl. I believe she was Shona. There's two main tribes there, Shona and Ndebele. And so she was a Shona girl. And Devarshi also had an attraction to her. So, it was apparently, I don't know, Cupid, whatever it might be. But anyway, somehow or another, they got together. She moved into the temple. And Devarshi was a very strict devotee. So he maintained the decorum. And, they did not stay together or anything, until they were actually married, which they went and legally got married and everything. So, but anyways, the reason I bring that up is because when Devarshi now considered going to India, he was now married. So, like what to do? You're not going to get married just recently and then you're taking off for India for 2 months. So he decided he was going to take his wife with him. So Devarshi, got the funds, everything together. He bought a ticket for her. So now all four of us were set to go to the Mayapur festival, and then we were going to go to Vrindavan. We were going to stay in India for some time. So myself and Brother Leela, I think we decided while we were in India, we were going to do a Tirtha Yatra following the path that Sriman Mahaprabhu took, because we didn't know when we go back to India. So we were going to follow the route of Sriman Mahaprabhu, go to Mayapur, go to Puri, and go to Vrindavan. So we were going to do all three things with the idea that we may not get to go back. So I'm hoping I got the chronology of this right. Again, I'm doing all this stuff by memory. So anyways, time came. We were all set to go. So myself, Nagapatni, Devarshi, and Rajalila were all there. We're on our way to India. Rai Bhakta Muni, I believe Bhuta Bhavan stayed there at that time. And, they were there to hold down the fort. Oh, there is something else that comes. Let me back up for 1 second. It's at this time, I think it's right before we go to India, I get a phone call from America. And, I take the call, and it's Srinath Prabhu. So I told you about Srinath Prabhu. I told you we were very good friends. And he had gone back to America, and he called me. And I know Srinath pretty well and everything. And so he called me and he asked me, hey, Prabhuji, how's preaching there? What's going on? So I said, things are good. It's not quite like West Africa, but it's really nice. It's open field. I described, Zimbabwe and Harare to him, and I told him we had traveled to Bulawayo and, what it was like. And so I gave him kind of a rundown. And he mentioned that, hey, Prabhu, I'm just drying up here in America, and I really, really, want to come back to Africa. Is there any way you could arrange a ticket for me to come back? So, I was, Devarshi, first of all, is really the one who's in charge of this project here. That's the one thing. And secondly, does that mean you're coming with your family and so forth and so on? So, unbeknownst to me at that time, I believe that they were not really together at that time. So, Srinath, he kind of sounded desperate. So I elicited from the sound of his voice, something is going on more than what he's telling me, and there's a reason why he wants to come. So, I'm thinking very hard, how to, because we're very good friends, and he's a nice devotee at heart, and I want him to come. I'm sure he could contribute to the yatra and everything else. So I'm trying to figure out ways, how we can do this. We've spoken about the Tirtha Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had not, I think, seen him directly, but he had spoken to him about it. And Srila Bhakti Maharaj had given his approval of it, so now, it was like a no-brainer. Maharaj approved it, then, good. So now we'll just see how to make it happen. Devashi somehow or another got, funds together to help Srinath get a ticket and everything. So then I'm talking to Srinath on the phone, and this was really, really funny. Srinath had apparently been in America for a while, and he was, doing different things, I guess, to get by and whatever the case is. But then he went, at some point, he was staying with his father. So his father knew about Srinath's involvement in Krishna consciousness, but I guess it wasn't something that Srinath had gone into any detail about with, what is Krishna consciousness. I'm sure he preached to his father, but, maybe it was something that they didn't share on any kind of really intimate level or something like that. But anyways, so Srinath is explaining to me, we're both about to have the laughing fit of life, right? So he's explaining to me, I wouldn't even talk to my father about it. And I told him that I wanted to go back to Africa. So his father apparently was helping him to go ahead and, make his life happen in America. So his father said, well, son, you're here now. I mean, you were all the way there with your family, everything. You came all the way back here to America. And, there's not a money-making opportunity or anything like that for you there. Why do you want to, go back to Africa so bad? I mean, what's pushing you to go back? So Srinath, in common devotee parlance, we often say something like, hey, I spoke to Maharaj, or, Maharaj said this, or Maharaj said that. So Srinath, in speaking to his father, inadvertently must have just said, well, Dad, I talked to the Maharaj, and he was like, and so his father, his father had never met Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, so his father has no idea, like when Srinath just gives a reference to the Maharaj, who he's talking about. So in his father's mind, his father's thinking about like maybe Indian person with a beard with the pointy shoes and the curly. So his father starts, kind of raising his voice saying, the Maharaj? No, son, not you. You're not brainwashed, are you? The Maharaj. So now Srinath is laughing hysterically, I guess, while his father's saying it, because his father's not, is not on the same page as Srinath. Srinath is talking about Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and his father's envisioning like this Indian, mystic or something with pointy shoes, and thinking that Srinath has gone off the deep end, right? Talking about the Maharaj and so forth. So as he's describing it to me on the phone, he's back into a laughing fit, and then I go into a laughing fit. So anyways, long story short, we get Srinath the ticket, and Srinath comes to Zimbabwe. So this is a short time before we're about to leave to go to India, myself, Rajalila Devashi and Nagapatni. And so Srinath comes, and Srinath just kind of really settles into the atmosphere in Zimbabwe. And he is instantly attracted, because he was in West Africa also, he liked it, but now Zimbabwe was like being in the States to some degree. It was just, warmer climate, beautiful atmosphere, but as I mentioned, it was more westernized, everything in Zimbabwe. So Srinath kind of easily took to it. Now, Srinath is, a very independent person, so Srinath, would grab his guitar from time to time and, go out and, play and do different things. So anyway, the other thing that, started to crop up was that because, Srinath was not with family at that time, was, in Zimbabwe and Central Africa in general, there's same thing in South Africa. There's three major categorizations of people there. There's the indigenous, people there, African-born, people. There are those who are mixed, right? And they used to call them colors, right? And they're a mixed whatever. And then there's, the Indians, expats, foreigners, wherever else is there, right? So the colored community, so to speak, is a large swath of the population, or a nice size of the population, especially in the city in Harare. So Srinath somehow or another hooked in with this community, and he was preaching and everything, you know, that's always how it starts out. But then he got more involved in it. Srinath was an extremely handsome guy, musician, everything. So there were some early signs of difficulty in terms of, ladies who were there and things like that, and so forth, so on. But Srinath also was a pretty determined devotee, so he would start to go like this way and then take the jet back into the core of Krishna consciousness, so to speak. So anyway, it came time for us to go to India. So myself, and as I mentioned, Devashi Nagapati Brajalila, we head off and we go to India and, go to the Mayapur festival, really, really nice. We go to Braja and, it's really, really nice. And I see in Braj, I see my old friend Ayendra, and so we're like, really, bonded again and everything, and we do kirtan. Now at that time, the 24-hour kirtan in Braj had not started yet. I'm going to tell the story about that. We actually kind of started the 24-hour kirtan in Braj again together, because I would go back to India in '86, and I'll tell that story at another time. Unfortunately, I think we have some of the home improvement people that we have going on here. They're just showing up here, so I'm going to have to cut things a little bit short. And I promise to pick up right from this place, if I can remember. This is going to be our trip to India, and I'll pick up from here in our next installment. Jai Dandavat Pranam devotees. Jai always Srila Gurudev, Srila Prabhupada, a Guru Parampara, Sri Sachinandan Gaur Hari, Shri Gaur Gadadhar, Shri Radha Vallabh Ji ki Jai. Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Radhe Radhe.